Straight out of Ecamm. This is a jam for the Ecamm fam. Ecamm fam, this the name of the jam. This is a jam for the Ecamm fam. Ecamm fam, this the name of the jam. This is a jam for the Ecamm fam. It's a jam for the Ecamm fam. This is a jam for the Ecamm fam. Ecamm fam is the name of the jam.
Hold it, stop the music!
Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen!
Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen.
Please have your attention.
Now showtime, are you ready? Are you ready for start time?
Let's find out. Ready, let's go.
There we are. What is up, Ecamm fam, and welcome to another episode of the Ecamm Live Friday demo. Today, Doc Rock is in NAB, I believe. That's exactly. Yep. I know he's running around. He's hanging around with Katie, and because of that, he wasn't able to do the demo today. But luckily, that I and Paul are available to help you out on today's live demo for Ecamm. So how are you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great. Takeover day.
All right. And we got the Ecamm fam in the house. We got Valerie saying what's up to Aubrey here. How are you doing, Valerie? She's saying hi to me and to you, saying great to see us. All right. Said where did the comment go? Paul?
I have them on my other window where you sent me all.
I think we see them all, so I have them here. We're going to be bringing them up in case you don't see them, Valerie. No worries, no worries. All right. And yeah, we got Mr. Moderator here also saying hey to the fam. That is the person on screen, Mr. Moderator. We got Aubrey saying hello as well. Parker Jennings, as always, hanging out with the fam. All right.
We got a
Rainy Cajun saying hand pink waving. Okay, that's exactly how the emojis come out. And Mr. Doc Rock is also in the house saying hello. And he actually says that Katie and that he and Katie are starting a session and don't break nothing. I think we got it under control. So yeah, we can see. All right. Well, because it is a live demo, me and Paul were actually talking about this a little bit before the show started. We were trying to pinpoint to see if we can actually direct what we were going to demo on today's show. But because we weren't really able to do anything, we got the open slate. We were going to talk about a couple of things. And your questions are highly valuable. So if you've ever had a question that was maybe not the topic at hand, today is a day for you to put it in as a question so that we can address it no matter what issues that you're having with Ecamm, because we're trying to figure out what issues you're having. Paul does a weekly show with Ecamm, so do I. And we run across our own issues, but we tend to handle them. And that's why we're here on a Friday to help you out so that we can do the same for you. And I love troubleshooting other people's situations, because it puts me in a different like frame of mind, because everyone's setup is completely different. So let's get into it.
Yeah, we just figured, rather than go through a full-fledged demo, because you've seen that many, many, many times, um, we'll just have you ask us, and we'll help you out. Just put a Q colon in front of your question.
Doc, Doc is talking about like for us not to break anything, and he's over here putting in comments, okay, like this to try to break us. You understand? To get us to start laughing. But with that being said, I guess one thing that I would like to talk about that I really enjoy using Ecamm about is actually what we're doing right now, which is, like having you in as a guest. And with the power of, the interview mode, which is something that has really been, a staple of Ecamm for a while now, is the fact that you're able to do remote production, which is also something that I do weekly on the Flow podcast, which is basically what we're doing here. Today, I'm on screen and I have you on as a guest so that we're just simply having a conversation and that we can do this easily through Ecamm. But I can just as easily go into a completely different screen where I isolate you and then you're the one who's on screen. So let's say, or for example, this week, because Doc is not here, he's also not going to be available for the Flow podcast. And because of it, Jared Spink is actually going to take the place. Because I'm the remote producer, there was basically effortless transition between Doc and Katie to Jared next week, because I'm the one who's pulling all the strings behind the scenes. I'm the one who's actually doing the entire production. So coming Tuesday, Jared is the one who's just going to call into my link, just like you did today, very easily. And you can do it from any browser, basically phone. But, the better the connection, the better the quality. But you can basically call in from whatever you have, and we can handle that on our end. And because of that, just as easily as you connected today, Jared's going to connect to me on Tuesday, and we're going to be able to produce the Flow podcast without a hitch.
Yep. Yeah, it makes it very nice. It's it's very simple.
Yep. Okay, we have a first question here. Says, how do you time delay text to appear on the screen, say 5 seconds after the scene is initiated? So let me see. How do you time delay text to appear on the screen, say 5 seconds after the scene is initiated? Okay, well,
yeah.
What are your thoughts? Because I have a way that I would do it, but it will not necessarily just be entirely on Ecamm. What are your thoughts, Paul?
I mean, if you're talking about comments or you're just talking like a text overlay, to go into the scene and then, either use a keyboard shortcut or, a Stream Deck key to bring the comments on when you want them to come on, and do it manually, is probably going to be the easiest way to do it without having to set up extravagant invisible timers and triggering stuff that way. I mean, it could be done, but it's going to be a lot more involved than just controlling it, on the fly.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of the same thing, because if it's solely on Ecamm, and it's a message, like something that we brought up, just like the question to bring up the comments, I really don't see that without having like an intricate level and having something like a Stream Deck to be able to initiate that once the scene is in place. Now, if it is a simple text overlay, right? Like let's say it was just your name or something like that. The way that I would do it is actually create it outside of Ecamm and make it into, a WebM file. That way you could actually have a video that will overlay with a transparency, just like an animation or a GIF or an what I would say, basically like a transparent, overlay that would just play on text. And because it's a video file, you can have that play immediately after the scene switches. So just like we basically have the background behind our, video images here. As it's playing, it's automatically playing in the same way. And because you've created it as a video, as a WebM, you could actually create the space before it actually presents itself. So
Yep.
in the video file, you will give it the 5-7 seconds that you need before you want it to present, then have it show up for the length that you want it to show up, and then have it disappear. And
Yep.
once you do that on a WebM file with a transparent overlay, you'll be able to easily just drop that onto any scene that you like. And as soon as you move on to it, it will automatically start to play that file and then finish that file, and it will do exactly what you want in the timely manner that you would want to do it. So that's the way that I would handle that situation personally, because like I said, I like to think outside of the box. So, using the power of Ecamm and your own creativity, you should be able to do basically anything that you want.
And Eric brought up a good point too, is you could create your overlays in as a presentation in Keynote and then set up delays in Keynote, and then Keynote, run it with a transparent background. And then Keynote would be bringing those text overlays or whatever you want. You can set timers up in that to delay things and switch things automatically too. So that's another way that you do it. The issue with going with something like Keynote or doing a video is you are locked into, for the most part, to a set period of timing of things going. So if something should change and you want something to happen a little bit differently or sooner, you're going to just have to let the video run. You can tweak it in Keynote and you can jump ahead a little bit, but if you bring in a WebM video, you're stuck with the timing that WebM video it has built into it. You can't jump forward easily to get to something sooner if you wanted to.
Yep, I do agree. That's why it's give or take, because in those scenarios I would recommend actually having like a key, and through Ecamm you can set up any one of these scenes. And let me jump into the live demo mode for the first time. All right, make sure that we're seeing.
One of the neat things with Ecamm is there's not necessarily only one way to do something. Because it's so flexible, you can do things in a lot of different ways. Just depends on what you're wanting to accomplish and what your end goal is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just wanted to show this, that here we have a lot of these scenes, but at the end of these scenes you have this little like control icon, and you can add a hotkey to any of these. So even if you don't have a Stream Deck, which I do recommend, you're able to actually just set up a hotkey to maybe a letter on a keyboard, something that that you would only use for that particular scene or that particular like overlay, and you can apply that just the same way to a text overlay. So on my live stream, I have the city's goth section, and I have that just set up as a text that flies in from the top, so that whenever I hit that hotkey, it'll bring down the text. It'll leave the text on there for the duration of my choosing. And as soon as I hit the key, it will then disappear in the same manner that it came in. So that's one of the easiest ways that I would use that overlay. And you know what? Let's demonstrate it. Because going right back to demo, I can take this scene right here, and I'm just going to go and add a text. Oh, the window popped up on my second screen so that we can see it. And right here, we're going to put Ecamm fam. Why did that put the autocorrect? There we go. That totally did not put the E. There we go. And now, right here with the little pencil is when we will actually select the position that we want. So we're going to put in fly in from the top, and we have it centered. We can switch, Fonts, you can do anything that you want here. As you could do the background colors or leave it completely off. So this one, I'm going to remove the background just so that we have the text. And then I'm going to hit save. And there we go. As simple as that. I'm going to now add the hotkey. And the one that I'm going to type is the letter E for Ecamm Fam. So now, whenever I click my keyboard E, it pops up and it goes away. And you're able to move that wherever you want within the screen. So if you want it to be like a label or a text, or basically have the ability to time it yourself, you can just set that up. And that's it. As simple as that. So there's, like you said, there's more than one way to accomplish basically any goal that you have using Ecamm to do all of your production. And that's how easy it is. And I just click it and it disappears. So let's go back to see if we have any more questions.
I have a question for you. Did you just hear a little ding?
I did.
Okay.
That was from your end?
Yeah. Not supposed to be doing that, but it's doing that.
And we have our appearance of Maestro hanging out. How is he doing?
He's doing good. He's like
All right.
wanting me to know he's around.
Because that's the coolest thing. Like, even this scene that you're seeing right now, I was able to just create this basically on the fly before we did this demo. I wanted to kind of match the colors that you have in your background, right? And also kind of like the Ecamm brand colors. So this one has a majority of them kind of swirling in there. It could use a little bit more blue. But for something that was just like on the fly, I think it did well. And then I was just able to just drop in our cameras and adjust them accordingly. So you can have this set up and it's very easy to create scenes.
Yep.
Let me ask you, Paul, what is one of your favorite features of Ecamm?
I really like the camera switcher. I have come to use that a lot because I basically only have a couple cameras, but I only really use one. I can do close-ups, I can do black and whites, I can preset and then just click and bring those in because if I want to get really close, I can switch just by clicking. So it works out pretty good. I really have got to be using camera switcher a lot more than I used to.
One of my favorite features is actually the ability to record multiple cameras. So the isolated video cameras, and not even for the live stream productions like we're doing now, but the behind the scenes or like your pre-recorded content.
Yep.
And the ability to have like an overhead shot being recorded at the same time as your main roll shot, so that you can just do the video once and actually have the ability to create like your secondary B-roll where you're demonstrating as you're talking about it at the same time. And as of Ecamm's latest update, the 4.0.6, I believe, that just came out, they just added the third camera to it. So now you have the ability to record 3 isolated cameras on your pre-recorded. So if you're a camera junkie like me, you have the ability to add just another camera to being recorded at the same time. So it gives me the ability to do a front facing, a side shot, and an overhead without any issues all at the same time. Real game changer.
Yep. We had another question. He didn't from Chaz, didn't have a cue, but he wanted to know how do you guys get the comments to show up like that?
Oh, that's extremely easy with Ecamm because it's part of the program. So let's go back to the live demo. Now, even though we have the live demo, what we're seeing here right now is actually what I have on my teleprompter. So you're seeing the fact that I'm seeing what's going on live onto the left-hand side, and you're also seeing like the comments on the screen. This is actually on my teleprompter. So As we're here, your comments are coming up, and it's as simple as clicking on it, and it comes onto the screen. That's how simple it is. If you want more than one comment on it, you can actually click and drag to add multiple. Was Oh, that was the wrong screen over here because I'm showing you the teleprompter. So if you want more than one, you would actually be like grabbing these questions and then adding them to that, and you have that ability. But that's when things could get a little crazy. You can just add one and have it set there so that whenever you click on a comment, you'll be able to just that easily put it into the location where you want it. So it will replace the last comment and where it was at. And then another feature to this, let me see if I can switch cameras again. Well, the live demo view. Okay, perfect. We're back onto the screen. Another feature about it is we will go here and we go into the settings, and in the general, automatically hide comments overlays after 15 seconds. So that's something that I always have clicked in so that in case I start to ramble and I forget exactly what's going on in the stream, the comment just won't linger there, and I could, move on with the conversation, have the ability to move something else on. And that also really helps out with, repurposing content. So let's say you wanted to clip something out, from a live stream or from a recorded piece of content, you'll be able to do that better, without the text overlay there. So just something that I always do.
And it was really neat in the latest update, the one before this one, where they added the placeholder for the comments. So used to be you had to have a comment in order to do it. Now you can use that placeholder and adjust it and get it so that it looks the way you want it to, and it's not so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And related to this, Kimberly asked, would this work the same with Zoom comments if you were broadcasting in Zoom? And no, you can't bring Zoom comments in to Ecamm. There's some programs that you can do this in a roundabout way, but you cannot directly bring Zoom comments into Ecamm. There's no API to do that.
Yeah, and that unfortunately has nothing to do with Ecamm. That has everything to do with Zoom. So
Yep.
those comments and the way that the comments and the chat works there is not the same as you would get from like a live stream. So the API is not available for, Ken and Glenn to actually get that and be able to put that onto the screen.
Yep.
If it's something that's really needed, you're going to have to, shout to Zoom and let them know that that's something that you want from the program so that they can start working on their end to give the ability to the creative minds at, in other programs, including Ecamm and a variety of others.
Yep.
All right. So Paul Kelly has a question. He says, enjoying the session, guys. Your thoughts, pros and cons, building Ecamm scenes versus Keynote slides. Me, I'll let you go for it first, Paul. What are your pros and cons versus like using scenes towards slides on a Keynote?
Scenes are real simple if you want to develop slides and stuff like that. They're you're not having to go anyplace else. You can do it all in Ecamm. So scenes work. It's kind of a basic, straightforward way of creating them. If you want to do a little more fancy, if you happen to catch Alex Ecamm Advanced session where he showed using Keynote, where he could put his bullet points and bring them up, but he slid the camera over, brought him in, and then had the bullet points on the side and brought them in individually, and had a little more movement going on and a little more flair using some of the features of Keynote. That's another way that you can do it. It's neither one is right or wrong. It just kind of, what are you trying to get as the end result? If you're trying to keep people engaged a little bit and add some flair or something like that, making it more like when you're doing an actual presentation at live where you're standing there and your notes are coming up next to you, you can use Keynote. But I mean, it's a 50-50 thing. Doing it in Ecamm is simple because you're only working in one program. But if you want to add a little more fluff and flair and bells and whistles, you can use Keynote. They both work.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that because that's kind of the same way that I would look into it. Kind of like the way that you mentioned that Alec has done it, because using it as part of the presentation. So when think of Keynote, I think of it as just one of my scenes within Ecamm, right? Because if I need to go to that presentation, then that's more to me like presentation mode, where I would do exactly the same thing. Take a video shot like this and put you, to the upper right, upper left, and then have the majority of the screen be the actual presentation and Keynote, which gives you the ability to, by simply clicking from one page to the next, to animate your text and the graphs in that way. So even going back to the first question on how to put an overlay for a certain amount of time, that could be another option if that's something that fits in your production, because you're able to just put like text on screen and have them literally wait for you to click onto the next slide before you get the next drop down. So let's say you were doing like a question and answer, you could have the question presented first, and then only until you click the next slide will you be presented with the answer. So a lot of different ways that you can do your production, but I think that's one of the coolest things about Ecamm, because you have the ability to make it as simple or as like grandiose as you want. Because I think I used to do it before to have scenes selected with timers so that I can have a variety of different angles and shots automatically switch while I was doing my live streams. Now with Ecamm, it's as simple as just clicking on a icon that has the selected timer on a folder, and whatever cameras you drop into it, it can take care of the rest, from exact timings to just completely randoms within a range at your choosing. So that's another one of like the super cool features of how it took the ideas that we were making in Ecamm and made them even easier and built into the infrastructure.
Yep. So let's see.
Okay,
There
we got
was
a question here. Says, can we change the color of comments? Actually, we can. Okay, so let's go into live demo mode once again. And here we are, the simple ability that what you're seeing here is what we're all seeing now as the producer. So I'm going to bring that question up again. Right? Can we change colors of the comments? And we have, once again, the little edit pencil. And once you have the edit pencil, you're able to come in here and not only edit the color of the comments, but also edit the comment itself. So I can go and put, yes, we can. Oh, I put can twice. Yes, we can change the colors of the comments. And right there, we go into the color effects here. Where did that? Oh, popped up on a different window. You're going to get your little color switcher or color selector here. And you have the ability to go into like the gradients. But basically, you could just pick a pencil. And then now that's blue. And you hit save. And it disappeared. But there you go. We could change the color of the comments. And that's how simple it is.
And one of the things to keep in mind, Luis went in and he changed the words of your comment. That's only going to show up when he brings the comment onto the screen. The comment that is actually in YouTube is not going to change. It's still going to look like the original comment that you put. That's only changing the comment that's going to be impacted when he brings it up on the screen.
Yeah, the reason why is because it's just an overlay. It is literally just like a photo. So now, because it's been converted into that text format, it's completely, you're completely able to edit it whether it's color, font, so on and so forth.
Yep.
Okay, so we have another question here. Oh, and we're all in blue now, so I'll be changing that back in a second. But the question is, how do we sync cameras and voice sync for guests? I have a delay set to myself, so that part is solid. I'm not sure exactly what the question is. I'm guessing a delay sync from the person or your guest.
Yeah, the guest. It would be the guests are sometimes not always synced. And that could be a variety of things. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if they have Ecamm or something of like Ecamm, we can go in and we can put a mic delay and adjust that. If it's just a normal person coming across, when that signal goes from your guest through the internet to the interview server that Ecamm uses, and then it's brought into the stream, there is delay can be introduced, and it can be a number. A site can be down, it could be having problems. When we had all the storms and stuff on the east coast, the networks were having to do a massive amount of rerouting of traffic, and there was much more delay getting lag and stuff being introduced into the streams. So occasionally you're going to have that experience, and it's sometimes you can control it, and sometimes it's just the network. If you've ever watched news stories, you see that frequently happening where the person's talking, but their voice is not in sync with their mouth. It's inherent with the network. They try to keep it as low as possible, but it could be the speed of the person on the other end, their network speed. There's a lot of things that can impact it.
That is true, but I must address the fact that a lot of times the sync issue starts from the person's computer, the person who's actually transmitting. And this has to do with how you're bringing in your cameras and how you're bringing in your audio. For some of us, right, in the Ecamm fam, and I am definitely pointing at myself, I'm going above and beyond just the norm of, a simple connection when it comes to my production. So I have an audio interface with an XLR microphone, so my audio is completely separate from my video, which would cause a miss sync issue. And it does, because the video coming out of my video camera also has its own inherent delay in reaching the computer. And once it leaves my computer to whichever destination, they're kind of like bound together as one file. So if the sync is off, initiated from my computer, then it's definitely going to be off over there.
Yep.
Now there's latency issues, which has to do with like the picture quality, and then maybe sometimes even the audio cutting out with people connecting, or let's say they're on Wi-Fi and they don't have the strongest connection. That's a completely different can of worms.
Yep.
But when it comes to the sync, that's another feature that Ecamm really does excel at, because we have our own like microphone sync, or our own microphone delay. And I know that the camera that I have with my audio setup, my synchronization is off by like 3 frames. So I know that I can set my microphone to offset that delay, so that now when I transmit from Ecamm to whichever destination, my audio and video are synced so that they're leaving out together, and I usually don't get those problems. So one of the easiest ways to maybe fix the delay issues from your guest is to get them to hook up to Ecamm, so that they can set their own mic delay, and that way when they connect using virtual camera and virtual microphone, they won't have any issues.
Yeah, I used to get really hung up on the mouth and the words not being in sync. And as I've started using Ecamm and all this stuff, I've come to reprogram myself. Plus, Doc's repeated it in my head numerous times, that what's important is the content that's being shared, what's being given to you, and not necessarily that the mouth and the words, it's nice when it happens, but if it gets out of sync a little bit, it's like, pay more attention to what's being said than how it's being said.
And that, well, you said it correctly too, a little, because there's only so much that you can deal with, and
True.
I think we've all dealt with that watching like a DVD movie. For those of you who actually still watch DVDs, but you know that you might lose a sync, and then that becomes like unwatchable because you can't make out from one scene to the next.
Just put a piece of tape over their mouth.
Then there's no point of watching that DVD. But let's see if we have anything else.
There was a question the following on to that, and it was from Paul Kelly. It was, can you combine the rant? Oops, sorry, wrong one. Where did it go? Oh, how do we sync? Where did it go? I just saw it.
Because Paul does have a question. He just put it in, but which one are you talking about?
It was basically with different. Oh, yeah, it was. Is there a way to sync delays for different cameras? Sony and Canon for one production. Sony is synced, but the Canon's always delayed. Kind of following on to what we just talked about.
Okay. Yeah, well, that sync will actually, you know what? Let me go ahead and kind of edit the colors again real quick so that we can see this. Let's go back to white. There we go. All right, so he says, is there a way to sync delays for different cameras, Sony and Canon for one production? Sony is synced, but Canon is delayed. Unfortunately, I don't think that we, like through Ecamm, you have the ability to synchronize different camera delays, because what we're actually delaying is the microphone. We're actually delaying the audio, not the video. So
Yeah.
the inherent, delay that the camera has, you're gonna have to pick, like your poison. So in this case, this is where I would highly recommend show you the benefits of being in one camera system, because if you had two Sonys, which maybe might not be available to you at the moment, but if you had whether it's two Sonys or two Canons, then you're gonna get kind of the same latency coming from them. And the only other thing that doesn't have to do with the cameras that I do want to mention is that if you do have two cameras that are coming in and you're getting those like synchronization issues, try your best to, even though that they're at separate lengths, to be using the same length of data cable or HDMI cable, whatever cable it is that you're using to connect to your camera, to your computer. Try to have them be of the same length or even the same type, because all of those things matter. When you're talking about the signals that you're being sent, if you have one camera connected with a 6-foot HDMI and the other one with a 25-foot HDMI, the 25-foot is actually still going to take even longer to run through the resistance of the actual cable before it gets to the camera, which has to do with the latency that we're mentioning here. So do your best to try to keep the cables of the same length, and if you can, to have the cameras of the same like brand or type, so that you can have like the best sync possible. But when you're dealing with two different cameras and maybe also two different cable lengths, it's going to be really tough. And like I said, we have the ability to change the microphone, so you would be picking on which camera system you would want to sync your microphone to.
Yep.
All right, so we have another question here. It says, follow-up question: can you combine the random Ecamm scene changes with all the goodness of Keynote presentations? The best of both worlds. Yes, but in that case, I would tell you to not even use Keynote. Like in that case, right, to have it do the automatically switching, I would then recommend to create the entire scene within Ecamm the same way that you would do it in Keynote, because there's similarities. So, in Keynote, you're presented with the program and you pick a background, and then you start picking, like your text and where you want them to go. You have that ability to do it through each scene in Ecamm, you're just gonna have to put the time in Ecamm scenes instead of your Keynote. What do you think,
Yeah,
Paul?
and it depends on you when you're going to do this. You have to make a choice. Do you want to use Ecamm or do you want to use Keynote? If you're doing your presentations and you've got your cameras in Keynote and you can use different slides in Keynote to kind of replicate the scene changes that you would be doing in Ecamm. So again, it depends on what your end goal is, what you want the look to look like. So you would use Keynote. You might be able to get off with doing a couple scene changes or something, and within Ecamm, but you're pretty much need to pick where you want to play in. Do you want to do all your stuff in Ecamm, or do you want to do it all in Keynote, and then stick with that, and then just work your slides in Keynote, or do it all in Ecamm? There's going to be trade-offs. Again, it all depends on what your end goal is and what look you're going for as to which way you want to go.
Yeah, because in that case, the only reason why I would assume, and just an assumption, that someone would want to use a Keynote presentation is because it's something that they have already made. So now they've already maybe have done this presentation quite a few times where they feel comfortable with the presentation itself, and now they just want to replicate that on a live stream or through some form of online event.
Yeah.
If, like I said, if you have the time at that point, I would totally convert like everything that I would have in my Keynote, whether it be scene or page by page, as a scene in Ecamm. And the frame of thought that I would like to, demonstrate or to give to you guys is that you would have to see every scene in Ecamm as a page of your Keynote documentation, and that's why you would have to spend the time, but it wouldn't be as much time as you think. And let's go back to the live demo mode, because of the simple fact that you have this little function right here at the bottom, which is duplicate a scene. So you can create the first initial scene and then make a change to it and then duplicate it and then create the next step to it and then duplicate it. And if you have that all done within a folder, then it's as simple as just having that folder be your Keynote scenes folder and have the ability to do everything within Ecamm itself. And that gives you all the functionality because it's not limiting you to the functionality of the Keynote program. And an amazing example of this is our very own Anna Hill and Fulgence Henry with their show, the building blocks, because they've gone above and beyond in showing you how you can do absolutely everything, within Ecamm using fonts, text, blocks, and a variety of different techniques to be able to recreate any production that you could imagine, all within Ecamm.
Yep. And again, if you're wanting to use Ecamm has basic transitions. They don't have in from the left, right, top, bottom, that type of stuff. If you want to do any other kind of transitions, a little more fancier or something, then bounce or pop or something, then you're going to have to go with Keynote. So again, it just depends on what look you're wanting in your presentation, as to which way you go. Neither one is wrong. It just depends on what you're going for, and that's. There was a question about 4K cameras I saw here.
Well, Paul actually replied and said, yes, much of my work is in front of audiences every once in a while online. So for him, it's literally like just kind of applying what he does on stage onto Ecamm. So in that way, I would definitely recommend more of that, like Alec presentation style, just kind of traditional, having you, whether, you can make yourself a bubble or, trademark Squircle right? That you can find within Ecamm and put yourself within your keynote presentations.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that Alex does that's really kind of cool is you can go from a full screen and then suddenly you can slide yourself off to the side and bring up bullet point, a screen for bullet points or other stuff in there. So you know, if you've got a huge base of Keynote slides, then I would stick with Keynote. You may just have to make some adjustments in your Keynotes presentation, but everything is there. It's just some mild modifications. Where was the
But
question about
Ecamm
4K?
also still makes Keynote easy because as soon
Yeah.
as you open the presentation, you can just simply hit the arrow keys on your keyboard and that will move you from page to page, effortlessly. So another advantage to having like the text on screen, whether it be on the live or on your keynote, is that you can monitor it. So
Yep.
a lot of times when you're doing live streams, you can get pulled into a question that derails you from the main point that you had of your live stream, which in this case we call it being squirreled. You just get distracted by the shiny object syndrome. And when your mind goes there, it's also good to have the text on screen, whether it be overlays or the keynote, to actually keep you on track and be like, oh, that's exactly where I left off, so now I'm going to talk about the next step.
Yes, and I found I keep losing the question.
Okay,
Las
this one.
Vegas Raiders had a question.
Okay, so let's see.
Yeah, and actually, Kevin, that option drag does work for scenes.
Okay, so when recording pre-recorded using Ecamm 4K quality, is it the same quality as if you would record it straight out of the camera? Not necessarily, and this is really getting into the nitty gritty. If you are recording 8-bit, like high type of files into your SD card, then yes. And to give you an example, the majority of my own workflow now is being done without memory cards because I'm doing directly to the hard drive, because I'm able to get the look and the imagery that I want out of Ecamm directly. So a lot less, or basically no, post production coloring work. I'm happy with the way the scenes look. So if it's a talking head and I'm happy with the colors, skin tone, white balance, all of that is being taken care of ahead of time and it's already set within Ecamm. It's as simple as hit record, and then when I drop those files into my Final Cut to do my edit, I am not even touching color because I know all the scenes are going to match. They're all, like congruent, so I won't have an issue there at all. But if you want to get the highest quality, and let's say you're dealing with one of the newer cameras which shoot in 10-bit, 422 or 4, and that's really getting into the technical side. And if that is what you're talking about, then you can get a log file with the highest amount of dynamic range, with the highest bit rates for each individual file, and that is not going to be matched through Ecamm just because of the program itself. But like I mentioned, my personal workflow, 8-bit color, 8-bit files, I'm no longer using memory cards. I'm going straight to hard drive. What about you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I've just do 4K into Ecamm and record it, and I have had no for what I do, it works perfectly great. It's fine. One of the big problems I see a lot of people doing is 4K 60, and generally speaking, unless you're doing gaming or something with lots of action, there's no real reason to do 60. When you're recording or doing 60 frames per second, you're literally doubling the bandwidth and the processing power and stuff that it needs to put that stuff together. So you're just adding more overhead than you really need. So
I have to agree. And when it comes to the gaming space, like I'm gonna reserve my thoughts because just to put it in a nutshell, excuse me, the quality of the highest quality that you want is for the gamer itself. It's not for the passerby or the watcher, right? So you start looking at these gamer streamers on Twitch, the person who's watching the gamer is not watching 4K 60. A lot of times they're watching in 720, or some other bit rate much lower than 4K in totality. So who is the 4K 64? It's for the gamer so that they can have the highest response time on their screens, so that they can perform the best in their online tournaments and their online gaming. So it is to have the highest quality gaming experience for the person who needs it, not for the person who is watching it as as a fan. So in that case, that's when I think that for my own setup, I would still be using Ecamm because of the ability to kind of reproduce my setup and give the highest quality for both my video gaming and also for my production. So, you know what? The cat's out of the bag. I'm just going to tell you how I would do it, and it is very simple. Let's say you have a high-end gaming PC, because in the PC world, they kind of reign dominant over the gaming aspect. So how would I use Ecamm to do so? Well, I would have one camera like this connected to my Mac Mini, basic, right? And pull that up as Ecamm and create a scene similar to what we have here. And I would have that scene with my bubble, like video off to a corner. Then I would bring in a secondary camera, HDMI adapter, but instead of connecting that to a secondary camera, right, I would actually connect that to my gaming computer. And because these high-end video cards have no problems producing dual outputs for two monitors, I would have one of them being brought into my Mac Mini, into Ecamm, and then I would have that being displayed for my viewing audience. And that's it, because you're going to get the highest quality bit rate from Ecamm, and you could even, broadcast in 4K. You're all set. But it's not going to be 4K 60 because they don't need it to watch the gameplay. But now what that also allows is that the primary video out from my gaming computer can go directly into my high frame rate monitor, and I can have 144 hertz monitor giving me the highest refresh rate, so that it improves the quality of my gaming, and my experience as a gamer is top notch. And completely separate on a Mac Mini, you have that doing all of the lifting, doing all of the production work, and all it's doing is just doing the same thing that we're doing right now, which is just outputting two camera feeds. One of them would be me as a gamer playing, and the other one would be the game actually being broadcast. And that's how I would set up my gaming, console network setup using Ecamm and something as simple as a Mac Mini. Okay, so we have a follow-up question. What is the highest quality you recommend when recording for an efficient workflow? That's completely up to you and your computer. When it comes to the workflow, it really has a lot to do with the computer, because we're constantly hearing about 8K and the latest, and all the people who are recording in 8K also have the 8K infrastructure as far as computers to be able to handle the size of those files and that workflow. I think personally 4K is more than enough for the majority of things, and the M1 computers right now are pretty much up to the task to handling that. So if you're within those specs as far as computers go, then I think, it's really up to you. But 1080 workflows also are just as fine. It has to do a lot with the back end and the time that it's going to take you to produce and deal with those files. And that also has to do with kind of the question that we talked about before, which was, if you're in the 8-bit codec, right? I'm doing all my files through Ecamm, so they're already a lot easier to edit through my Final Cut Pro instead of dealing with 10-bit files, which could have higher bit rates and then become even harder or take longer to edit those files.
And part of it too is, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, if you're streaming and stuff, most of the platform can only at the most handle a 4K stream. And a lot of it depends on what you're streaming to, because there are some platforms that can only do 720 or 1080 or something like that. And so if you're streaming to, multiple sites, like using Ecamm's multi-streaming capability, you're going to be limited to the lowest common denominator. So if one of the sites you're streaming to can only do 720, it's going to force you to change in your settings down to 720 to meet that standard. So everything's going to go out 720. So again, it kind of depends where you're streaming to, what you're doing. But for me, 4K right now today is more than enough. It serves the purpose. It's going to give great quality. It's going to give you good quality when you start repurposing for other platforms. It's very easy to shrink something down to a lower resolution than it is to try to take something that's a low resolution and try to boost it, to up to 4K or something. If you do 720 and you try to make it, 4K, you're going to lose some quality along the way. But I would just say stick with 4K.
Mm-hmm. If you can, right? If you
Yeah,
can.
if you can.
But there's also a variety of different methods, like that you could handle that workflow as well. And when I say workflow, it's usually post-production. So that's the way that I think about when it comes to workflow, is like, how long is it taking you to edit, and if the files are like too big. And right now 4K is, I believe, a very good standard, because like you just said, it's more than good enough for you to be able to punch in and get more out of the same footage compared to for you to try to up-res. But that is a conversation for another day, because there are new programs out there like that Topaz AI upscaler, which that's completely into the photography niche, into the video niche. But if you guys are interested, look into that, because what you're able to do with up-resing a file that could have been recorded not at as high as quality and bring it to like today's standards is very, very interesting. But like I said, that's for another day.
Yeah, and one of the things that I also look at the 4K concept of today doing, it's like quality is going to increase. I mean, you look back a few years, 720 was a big deal, and then 1080 became a big deal. If you take a 720 video, which looked really great, years ago, and put that on a 4K TV, it looks like crap.
Soft.
And so if you're thinking about future proofing yourself a little bit, if you're filming in 10K today, when it starts going up a little bit more, that 4K is still going to look rather decent. It's going to, if you go to an 8K TV, a 4K video is going to look a lot better than, doing 1080 is going to look. 1080 is going to look, like the 720 today. So I kind of look at it that way, of future proofing and keeping things out there, as it's going to get viewed, or I may want to repurpose it down the road for something else. I have the quality to work with.
Yeah, and the way that we have the ability to upscale a 720, right, to like a 4K with these new programs. Imagine the future that we're going to have 16K, right? The better the file that you have to work with initially,
Yep.
the better it will be upscaled. So there will be a much higher probability of you having the ability to upscale a 4K file to something like 16K when we get there in the future, right, than it would be to get that 720 or 1080 file to do the same when we're at that juncture. So it's all hypotheticals that we're speaking about, in the future, but it's just the way to look at it if you're trying to, like you said, future proof and get the highest quality available right now.
Yep.
Okay, and we've reached the hour mark, but we do have one more question here from Las Vegas Raiders. Says, is it possible to live stream in 4K? Currently using another streaming service and it slows to 1080 60. Yes, that's one of the things. Now, Ecamm does not give you the ability to stream 4K 60, and it's not really necessary. And having so much bandwidth going 60 frames per second over the internet is, you're just kind of asking for it when it comes to the infrastructure that we have built right now, not only like within your home, but outside of your home when you're trying to broadcast that around the world using a platform like YouTube. So what you really have to do is, Ecamm still gives you the mixing up the words at the end of here now. Ecamm still gives you the ability to broadcast in 4K, and I do so myself. I broadcast weekly at 4K 30, and it goes without a hitch. And that's one of the reasons why I love Ecamm, because it gives me the ability to broadcast and record in that highest quality to kind of future-proof myself. And that is strictly the way that I like to do it. So 1080 60 looks great because of the extra frame rates, but it still does not compare to 4K 30.
Yeah, and it's all going to be dependent upon the platform that you're using to stream with, or the platform you're streaming to. Like right now, this stream is in 4K to YouTube, and it will be held out in YouTube in a low res, a high res, and 4K. So Ecamm or YouTube allows us to stream directly into it at 4K. Other platforms don't allow 4K. So again, like I said, it's going to depend on what the platform holds. Sometimes it will take your 4K and it will downgrade it into, so you still have a really good quality picture, but the final file that you have, if you ever want to decide you want to repurpose it, is in 4K, and you can do a lot of different stuff with that 4K file. But again, it depends on the platform that you're streaming to as to what it can handle, because some will downgrade you to 10K or 1080.
Yep, but then the last thing that I want to add to that is that there's a lot of things that you have to think about. Not only Ecamm, if you're looking to legitimately get into a 4K workflow, right? Meaning that that's your production. Because on top of having a camera that has the ability to actually give you a 4K image, you need to have the video capture card that also has the ability to receive the 4K, because the lesser expensive ones that you find on Amazon can say 4K, but they're not producing 4K. What they do is they're able to receive that image and then do the same thing that your other service providers are doing, which is downscale it to 1080, and then that's how your computer receives it. But that means that you're maxing out at that 1080 feed. So in my case, I have my computer, but I also have a Camlink 4K that has the ability to receive a 4K image and make sure that my camera can produce that image. And that's the start. And then that's when you're able to use Ecamm and bring it up to the highest quality and be able to broadcast that and record it. All done with the power of Ecamm.
Through one last comment in this before we end. Along that same line, most of the time, a lot of people will use a USB cable to connect their camera to the computer. And with a USB cable, generally speaking, the best you're going to get is 720. You might, depending on the camera, you might be able to get 1080, but generally speaking, if you're using just a USB cable between your camera and your computer, you're only going to get a 720.
Yep, and that is so true. Like this little camera that I got here, like the ZV cameras from Sony, even though I use Sony, to get that 4K image, I have to utilize the HDMI and then just have it, within plug-in power or a dummy battery to get the highest quality. If I were to connect it via the USB-C directly, then I'm maxing out at 720p, because that's all that my computer is going to see, because that's all that connection can handle.
Yep. Yeah. So, well, I think we did it.
I think we did it. I think we did our best at answering everyone's question. I really enjoyed the conversation and looking into Ecamm in the variety of different ways to try to help out the Ecamm fam as much as we can with whatever issues that they could be occurring using this amazing program.
Yeah, and we thought we'd do it a little differently today too, since you see Doc do his thing all the time. So we thought we'd just kind of open it up and let you ask questions. So thank you for asking questions. They were great. And
Yes.
it was fun.
No, absolutely. Well, Paul,
Maybe Doc
thank
will let
you
us
as
do
well
this
for
again.
taking the time. And yeah, I'm also glad that we were also able to help Ecamm and the Ecamm fam know
Yep.
that we are available whenever we are needed. So if it's called for us, I'm always happy to help.
Yeah, and we're in the Facebook group. We're in Discord. Keeping an eye out things. So and ask questions over there. If there's things that you need help with, or anything like that, we'll be glad to help. If it's a technical issue or something it looks like it's a problem, feel free to always open a ticket with support and let them know, because if there's a problem, support needs to know it so that they can track it down and keep an eye of it. But if it's just like, how do I do this? Throw that in Facebook. But if it's a technical problem you're having, always open a support ticket. But we're always around to help.
Yeah, but the whole thing is you could always start at Facebook, because
Yeah.
we'll be the first ones to let you know if we actually can help, or also let you know what, this needs to kind of be escalated and you should write a ticket out. So it's just the same. Either we have the answer or we have the way to direct you. So,
Yep.
all right. Well, that's it. Everyone, thank you once again for hanging out with the Ecamm fam. And that's it for this week's demo. Next week, we're going to have a demo, and that one's going to be hosted by Daniel Chi. So it's going to be very, very interesting. I'm excited to see what
Daniel's
he's
always
able
fun.
to bring up. Yeah, always fun. And I'll be in the moderating side in the chat with Paul next week there. So thank you to everyone to make the time and hanging out with us. And we will see you all next week.
Take care, everybody.
Coming straight out of Ecamm. This is a jam for the Ecamm fam. Ecamm fam is the name of the jam. This is a jam for the Ecamm fam. Ecamm fam is the name of the jam. This is a jam for the Ecamm fam. This is a jam for the Ecamm fam. This is a jam for the Ecamm fam. Ecamm fam is the name of the jam.